Wizard, or WZRD, is the debut studio album by rock duo of the same name, made up of Kid Cudi and Dr. Genius, released in 2012. Let's get right into it, shall we? Coming up at track 1, we have The Arrival. Like most album intros of Kid Cudi's, this is once again an instrumental song. The Arrival, pretty fitting name because it kind of sounds like it belongs at the beginning of like a video game or a movie perhaps. Sounds a bit intense or dramatic. And this is clearly the beginning of a more rock-inspired turn that Kid Cudi would take in his music. The instrumental here sounds a bit similar to a song on his next rock-inspired album, Satellite Flight, which was released in 2014. And as usual, I don't typically find myself going back and listening to like the album intros when they're just instrumentals and things of that nature, but this one does sound okay. Track 2 is High Off Life. As the title says, Cudi sings about being high off this new life that he has. Coming off his mixtape, A Kid Named Cudi, and his first 2 albums, Man on the Moon 1 and 2, he's made a name for himself in the music industry, and he's feeling a bit high off the life of being a celebrity. New experiences, buying new houses, and traveling to different places, it's like it's his own drug, as mentioned so in the bridge quite literally when he says he's ODing off the life. Understandable for someone on their 3rd studio album now. Cudi shows off his guitar skills like he does in a majority of this album, and it sounds pretty good. Unlike some of his other songs about dealing with changes in his life and fame, this one has a bit more of a positive sound to it rather than an overwhelmed or depressed one. Not one of my favorite songs on the album, but it's definitely not the worst one by any means. Next up is track 3, The Dream Time Machine. And as you can probably guess, this song, Cudi talks about his dreams being achieved. Being in a place where things are like a dream come true to him, quite literally. Happiness and success. It's a far throw from some of the darker tracks that he's put out prior to this one. He speaks of being the man now and being in control of who he wants to be. It's a feeling that many of us strive to attain. I'm sure it's great. This song features Australian duo Empire of the Sun on the production, and it really has a lot going on with all this like seemingly random noises in the background. Overall, it doesn't really sound bad though. It kind of fits in a weird way. Perhaps it's a reference to the dreams from the title and that Cudi speaks on, because as we all know, dreams can be quite random at times where we don't know what the real meaning of it is. So hey. Next up is track 4, Love Hard. Easily one of the standout tracks on the album and one of the most relatable to me personally. Cudi questions his girlfriend about what she'll do when times get hard. If you love someone hard, then you can get through those tough times. It's a simple enough statement. If you put time and effort in, and your partner does the same, you can make things work. Easy enough, right? The guitar riff is freaking great, as well as the chorus, and the fact that it urges you to let your guard down and to follow your heart. Vulnerability is something that we often have trouble expressing or showing in relationships for whatever personal reasons that we may have. This song speaks to everybody out there who has ever been in love, and I truly enjoy it. Cudi's vocals are intense, and the subject matter is one that I can truly get behind, so this is a top track for me, one of my personal favorites. Next up is track 5, Live and Learn. Probably the most feel-good song on the album. It's all about taking that ride, as Cudi says on the outro, and living your life while learning from your mistakes. It's another favorite song of mine on the album, and as usual, the duo did their thing here on the production. This track is a pick-me-up that really makes you want to get out there and get something done or try something new, perhaps. The chorus ties into the whole Man on the Moon theme of his prior albums, as he asks where he comes from, a planet, or maybe it's the moon. You know, it's cool that even on his other albums he tosses in those references. It's nice to see the consistency. The only downside I really have to this track is the last minute or so, where the feeling just completely changes. It turns into just an instrumentation note track, and it's no longer really upbeat and free feeling. The guitar chords change, it becomes more harsh and aggressive, and it doesn't even sound like the same song anymore, and it could have been completely just left off the song. But besides that, I love everything that came before it. Great. Next up is track 6, which is Break. B-R-A-K-E, not B-R-E-A-K. The first song released from the album, and it's a largely instrumental one at that. It's over 5 minutes long also, and the first minute and a half or so is pretty much just instrumental, and about the last minute and a half as well. Kid Cudi sings in the middle, about lacking a guiding light and going downhill with no brakes. Freaking terrifying, to be honest. It's not one of my favorites on the album, really, and it's a bit more of a downer than previous songs in the album. And, it's one of the ones that I would just pretty much pass on, honestly. Coming up next is track 7, Teleport to Me, Jamie. Now, ironic that probably my least favorite song on the album is followed by my favorite song on the album. This is the second one that was released by Cudi, and the lead single. It's an ode to his girlfriend at the time, pretty sure her name was Jamie, and it samples Under Your Spell by the group Desire, which was featured in the movie Drive, which is a great freaking movie, by the way, and this song, like that movie, is also great. It's my favorite song on the album, and Cudi belts out heart-tugging vocals about how much he wants his girlfriend to just be next to him. And the first line references an airport, which gives you some frame of reference of this being maybe a long-distance relationship of sorts, possibly because his career often has him traveling. It's very relatable to me personally, and hey, I understand you, Cudi. It's hard, I know, but it's a very beautiful song and easily a top 3 one for me, without a doubt. Next up is track 8, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? This is a cover of a folk song, apparently, called In the Pines. Cudi gives his best Nirvana impression, which is pretty fitting considering they also covered this song too, and a whole bunch of other groups did as well in the past. Personally, I feel like if you have to ask your woman or man where she or he slept last night, then that's kind of a bad sign for the relationship. Seems like you two might have some miscommunication going on, and you might want to get that fixed. That aside, however, the song itself is not too bad. It continues this more solemn feeling that is in the latter half of the album with songs like the previous two. It's quite the contrast to the first half, where things seemed a bit more positive, upbeat, lively, so on and so forth. Up next is track 9, Efflictim. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's easily the darkest song on here, without a doubt, albeit another one of my favorites also. If you need a song to listen to on this album while you just freaking cry your heart out, trust me from personal experience, this is the song to do so. I just found out during the research for this album review that Efflictim means passionately or desperately in Latin, which makes a lot of sense in the context of the subject matter of this song. The production has a very chilling feel to it and a very repetitive guitar chord that is almost hypnotic in its presence. The first lines here are, how would you feel if you heard the news that I was dead? And I'm just like, wow. So you could probably guess where the song is going after that. Cudi questions the listener, most likely his lover, with these hypotheticals in a way to let us know that life is too short to not show love to one another while we're still here to feel it. Truly one of the most relatable songs and honest ones on here, and shows a very vulnerable and honest part of Cudi. Beautiful song. Up next is track 10, Dr. Pill. As you can probably imagine based on the song title, this is all about Cudi's issues with prescription medication. Apparently at this time he was seeing a doctor about his mental health who had prescribed him various antidepressants. Cudi speaks to this Dr. Pill in question with a level of frustration and questioning if he could be helped with his feelings of uncertainty and illness. Even at times, maybe feeling like the personification or disassociation, perhaps, with lines like stuck in a human-like shell and not knowing who that face belongs to, in reference to, looking at yourself in a mirror. It's one of the most relatable songs, once again, for anyone else that also deals with mental health issues and may have taken medication to try to deal with those issues better. I'm no stranger to mental health issues myself, but I can't relate to the feeling of taking antidepressants and the like. This song gives a bit of insight on that, and I can really appreciate it for what it is. Last but not least is track 11, Upper Room. This is a much more uplifting track, perhaps in a similar vein to how Man on the Moon 1 finished with tracks like Higher and Up, Up, and Away. It's a bit more of a high note compared to some of the previous tracks. Cudi speaks about not believing in miracles, but believing in destiny, and tells us that there's someone in the sky looking out for us. References to God are nothing new to Cudi's music, as shown on his prior albums, and the ones following this as well. It sounds like a celebration of life, a parade of sorts. Cudi has a message to the listeners that he has to get out, and he does it right here to wrap up the album. Regardless of your own views on spirituality, you can't help but feel Cudi's positivity throughout the song. It's an uplifting track, more similar to the first half of the album, compared to the darkness on tracks like Break and Dr. Pill, and so on in the latter half of the album. Overall, Wizard, or WZRD, is a decent outing by the pair, different from Cudi's previous releases, mostly due to it being more rock influenced rather than hip-hop. Cudi and Dot have been friends for a long time and have worked on music together for years. Every release that Cudi has had, Dot has had some level of production and so on it, to a certain degree. This is different because it's a completely collaborative effort between the two. As usual, the subject matter varies, but leans towards dealing with mental health illness like depression, drug use, addiction, and so on that we know Cudi to cover in his music previously. It's an enjoyable listen for the most part and has very few songs that I would skip over myself. It's also quite shorter than his previous releases at 11 tracks compared to the 15 and 17 on the standard editions of Man on the Moon 1 and 2 respectively. So there's less room for error as well. There's tracks in here that I enjoy and some that I don't enjoy as much, to say the least. And, of course guys, this is part of the Kid Cudi album review series, which is probably on hiatus until Kid Cudi releases his next album, which should be slated for next year, I believe. Now, I can also cover his mixtape, A Kid Named Cudi, which was released before Man on the Moon, if you guys would like. So, as always, leave a comment in the comment section below if you'd like me to do that, or if you have any other albums you would like me to listen to, review, so on and so forth, or just feel free to tell me how you feel about this album in particular. How do you feel Cudi and Dot did on Wizard, or WZRD? Now, as always, follow the channel on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter if you have not done so already. I Twitch stream on a regular basis, and of course, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and stay tuned for more, because more is on the way. That's all. Have a nice day. This was Kid Cudi and Dot the Genius, or WZRD, or Wizard, and I'm out, guys.